Well, today I took apart my solo seat hardware to show you guys that are interested what I did to make up the hardware when I installed my seat. This was done 12 years ago, and I'd forgotten some of the details of what I've done. But this is the entire assembly that came out. I removed the retaining plate that has my ignition coil mounted on it, lifted that off the top, and you just pull these right out. Now, let me start from the top, I guess. I'll put the parts over here. This is the shaft. It's a stainless steel shaft, and it has a bushing on the top, and it has a bushing on the bottom. You can see the black Delrin on there. Now, this rod is 5/8 of an inch in diameter, and before I had a milling machine, all I had was a lathe, so I cut this by hand, this half notch, and that's for the seat bolts to go through. And this is 5/8 diameter, like I say, and it's 7 3/4 inches long end to end. It has this piece of black Delrin, and that is 800 diameter. That's 0.800 diameter, and it has a 5/8 inch hole bored through the middle of it. And that Delrin is 3 1/4 inches long, and I pressed that onto the shaft. It's tight. I can't remove it. It's a press fit on there, and that is just on there forever. If I took it off, I'd have to destroy it, and I don't want to do that. Now, in the end of that stainless steel rod, I've drilled and tapped a 1/4 hole for a 1/4 bolt to go into. And what that 1/4 bolt does, I've got a little aluminum bushing that I made. I don't know if you can see that in this light. It's pretty bad. But that goes, it has a 1/4 inch hole through it, and that goes on the end here. Then I discovered that my springs were broken on the top. This spring, the top coil was broken off. And originally, the idea that I had when I put it together was I put this bolt and washer, if you can see that, inside of the spring, put the bolt in, and then I slipped the washer between the top coils, and then ran the bolt through that, and that held the spring attached solidly to this stainless steel rod. It's not necessary, you know, I can see that today, but at the time I made this 12 years ago, I thought I wanted to have that on there and have it bolted together. As a result, probably the bolt pinched it, put some pressure on it, and caused the coil to break. But the seat still works perfectly. Until I pulled this out, I didn't know that I even had a broken spring on it. And the next thing to go on here would be the spring. There's 2 of them. And this one takes up the initial pressure of the weight of the rider. And when this gets compressed to a certain point, the secondary spring, which has a much stiffer coil value on it, that starts to compress, and that takes up the rest of the compression. So the long spring compresses first, and then at a point of compression, the shorter spring starts to compress. The shorter one's on the bottom. And again, you put this guy together. There's my spring in one piece. And you put the rod on it. And you just drop this down into the frame. It drops right down to the bottom of the frame tubes. Then on top, you've got your rod sticking out of the frame. You take this Delrin bushing that I made, slip that on over, and that slips down into the top 1-inch section of the frame. This bushing here, let's see, is 1 inch in diameter, and it's 1 5/16 inches long, and it has a 5/8 inch hole drilled through the middle of it. That's to fit down onto there, and that locates in the top of the frame tube and your plate goes on top of that. Now when your plate goes on, this bushing will be sticking up a little bit. I can see a line on it. It's probably 3/8 of an inch that it sticks out of the frame. When that plate goes on the top, it'll compress these springs below it, and it'll bolt down tight against the frame. And then you're spring loaded already, and then as your seat goes up and down, the rods go up and down. There's 2 of these rods, identical hardware on both of them, so I only pulled one out, cleaned it up a little bit just to show you what the pieces are and what I made. This spring, the long spring, contains 20 coils. The OD of that is .733 diameter, and the overall length of that spring is 4 1/8 inches long. The short spring has 9 coils. It's .733 diameter, and its overall length, the free length, is 1.810, or 1 13/16 inches long. I've got a little aluminum spacer between the springs I turn just to hold them together, to hold them in register. Once they're inside the tube, they're not going anywhere, and this holds them in place. It'll also, with some grease on there, it will hold. It won't drop like that. It'll hold so that I can pick it up and move it and drop it into the frame without it falling off like that. That was the reason I put this bolt at the top where the spring broke. If you guys care to have further dimensions of these pieces, I'll be glad to post a thread on that and show you the dimensions of them. The cross section of these springs, they're not round coils, they're more of a rectangular shape, and the thickness of these coils, let's see, they are decimal 173 thick. Excuse me, got that wrong. They're decimal 173 diameter OD of the spring, and the thickness of the coil, top to bottom this way, is .084 inches. So they're kind of a rectangle or an oval shape, not an oval, they're a rectangular shape in cross section. And again, I can post that if anybody's interested. I can post the dimensions of this little bushing, but you can probably figure it out yourself if you're going to just open yours up and make some of these rods and springs up to go in. The problem seems to be people finding the springs, and I've lost the details of the model number of the springs I bought, but these springs I bought from a spring making company who stocked springs of all kinds, and these are just off-the-shelf items. You just have to get your loads and get your diameters and go from there. But these fit, they drop right down easily into the frame tube, and it's worked really well. It's the first time I've had the thing apart in 12 years. I was surprised to see that top of that spring broken off, but again, that's because I decided to use a 1/4 bolt to hold it together. That's not necessary. I can see today that I didn't need to do that. So that's about it. I hope that explains it a little bit better and shows you some of the pieces that I made to do mine. Other guys have other ways of doing it. They use other kinds of springs, and that's great. As long as it works for you, that's the important thing. Thanks for watching.